Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to Sunday School here on Texas Football. We'll get into the second part of my NFL draft analysis for the Longhorns, all the rounds 4 through 7, and the undrafted free agents who are hoping to achieve their dreams here coming up this NFL season. So we'll talk about that. Before we get into it, though, this session of Sunday School brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura Baker and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So if you have any concerns or questions regarding real estate in the Austin area, reach out, please, at 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. to Laura Baker and her team, or you can reach out at Laura@AndyAllenTeam.com. That's Laura@AndyAllenTeam.com. We appreciate Laura and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football and sponsoring this segment of Sunday School. All right, so let's get into it. The first pick for the Longhorns in the fourth round, Gunnar Helm, going to the Tennessee Titans. So first of all, it's a beautiful thing that he gets a young quarterback to grow with. That is something that some GMs and front office and coaches believe in, that you want a quarterback and some receivers to grow together. So being drafted in the same draft class with the franchise quarterback for the future, that I think is a little bit of an advantage. And I would say, just kind of looking at the investment at tight end for the Titans organization, with Gunnar Helm going fourth round, 120th overall, that would be the second most draft capital spent on a tight end since 2010 for the Titans. The other one is Jonnu Smith, who they drafted, I think, 89th overall. So it just shows you that that's a lot of faith they have in the upside of a Gunnar Helm. This is not some kind of throwaway pick for them when they're drafting tight ends. They have been trying to rebuild that tight end room. Right now, the top tight end is Chig Okonkwo. He last year had 52 receptions, 479 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's on the final year of his rookie deal. Also good for Gunnar Helm. He's on the final year of his rookie deal. He's the lead tight end. He did have a really, I think, great ending to the season. I think he really flashed the last 3 games. He had 8 for 59, 8 receptions, 59 yards, 9 for 81, and 5 for 42 on 28 total targets in those 3 games. So maybe contract year. They always say everybody plays better in the contract year, so he'll probably play really well. I don't know if the Titans are going to want to re-sign him. They drafted a tight end in the 5th round, Josh Wiley, in 2023. He's huge. He's 6'7", 248. And I think he's the second tight end for them in their 12 personnel. We'll get into that in just a second. And then there is a David Matu Robinson. He's an undrafted free agent for them, about 6'3", 250. He came aboard in 2024. And then they have a developmental tight end that's been with them for a couple of years now, Odukoya, Thomas Odukoya. He's from Amsterdam, played in the CFL, and has been kind of a developmental project for them since 2022. So just kind of looking at the roster and the little bit I have watched of the Titans, because I do get to watch the Titans because I'm a Texans fan. So get to watch the Titans a few times a year. I would say he looks like, to me, he's the second best receiving tight end already, kind of walking in. Behind the leading receiver at tight end, Chig Okonkwo. I think he kind of steps in as the second, and that's really good for him, because that means, if I'm right about it, that means they're 12 personnel, which they play 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends. They're at about 17, a little over 17%. And if you look at them playing 13 personnel, which is 1 back, 3 tight ends, they're around close to 4% of the time they're playing 13 personnel. So that's 20+% of the time, 22% of the time, they're going to have multiple tight ends on the field, and Gunnar Helm just got to be able to crack the top 2. I think has a really good chance he could, considering the investment in draft capital they spent on him, and considering I believe they're going toward more of a passing offense, right? They're going away from the Vrabel bully ball format. They're going to a passing offense. Brian Callahan's the head coach there. He was the former offensive coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals. They want to throw the football. Look at the offseason acquisitions. Got Tyler Lockett in there. Go look at some of the other draft picks. They drafted the wide receiver, Ayo Manor. They drafted him, Xavier Restrepo. They got him in there, Cam Ward. They want to go start throwing the football more. That's a really good sign for Gunnar Helm. So I think he may be already, even without even, having played a rep or practiced a rep with the Titans, I think he might already be the second best receiving tight end on that roster. And they invested a lot in him. His big issue is going to be run blocking. All right. How quickly can he become more than a capable, competent run blocker, be somebody that can actually be a difference in run blocking? Because that may be a reason why one of the other tight ends, Josh Wiley, Matu Robinson, those guys are under contract through 2026. And so that could be competition for Gunnar Helm the first couple of years. And what may keep him off the field is the ability to be able to block in the run game. That is not something he excels at, but Gunnar Helm is still getting better. So I think it's a lot of good news, in my opinion, for Gunnar Helm, because I think that they're going toward a passing offense. And ultimately, I think their investment at tight end, like I said, for him, that's something you haven't seen from them in 16 years, only like once in 16 years. They invested that much in a tight end. It's a really good landing spot. And he can grow with a young Cam Ward. Really good landing spot for Gunnar Helm. And they got new leadership. Remember, they got a new GM with them. He was Mike Borganzi. He was with the Chiefs for a few years. He was the assistant to Brett Veach with the Chiefs, who's one of the best GMs in all of the NFL. And Dave Ziegler, I believe, is the new assistant GM there. And he was with the Patriots for a long time. Then I believe with the Raiders for a while as their GM. So new leadership, and that new leadership actually really likes Gunnar Helm considering the draft capital they spent. All right, Barron Sorrell. Let's go to him. Barron Sorrell drafted 4th round, 124th overall. Going to the Green Bay Packers. They get 2 Longhorns. And this is interesting because I heard, and we actually played it on one of the shows, Matt LaFleur, the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, saying that they had brought in some Longhorns for visits and talked to some Longhorns, during the whole offseason process. And they would ask them, hey, who's the best, teammate? And who's the guy, if you could bring them along with you and be teammates with them in the future, who would it be? Who's the guy that always kind of sets the standard at practice, great practice player, great leader. And Barron Sorrell's name kept coming up for him. I mean, that's what Matt LaFleur said. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said, that his name kept coming up. He's one of those guys. And so they drafted him. It's of course, it's a lot about his skill set, but as much about skill set, as much about culture and character, I should say, and it is about skill set with him. And I agree, Barron Sorrell is one of them dudes. Like, got better every year. Became, as the Longhorns continue to add talent at that edge position, he just got better to keep his job. All right. And it pushed him to be the best player he could be. And he was there in Green Bay when they drafted him. You can't get more serendipitous, right, than that. But they have Rashawn Gary. He's a leading edge defender, or the best edge defender. Had 7.5 sacks last season, but only 11.5 pressure rate. All right, 11.5% pressure rate. So not a really high pressure rate. Now, they didn't really have trouble getting to opposing quarterbacks, but the pressure rate was relatively low for their best edge defender. Their second best edge defender, Kingsley Enagbare, he had 4.5 sacks, less than a 10% pressure rate from him. That was 80th among edge defenders. The pressure rate for Rashawn Gary was 45th, 11.5% pressure rate. So they want more guys that can be impact players and havoc players on the outside. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be Barron Sorrell. I will say Barron Sorrell got better as a pass rusher every year he was at Texas. And I remember one of my, it's a critiques of his game was, I got to see more from him as a pass rusher. I have to see him evolve. I have to see him, expand his repertoire, pass rushing moves. He did exactly that. And the pressure rate actually reflects that. His pressure rate his first year, 7%. Second year, 9%. Third year, 10%. 14% pressure rate last season for Barron Sorrell. He got better. He expanded his repertoire of moves. He even had a 3% quick pressure rate. That's pressure in under 2.5 seconds. And ended up, having 6 sacks in 2024, his, career high at Texas. He got better as a pass rusher. Now, where he excels as a run defender, this is why the Packers love him, because the Packers, they finished 8th in sacks with 45. So, like I said, they got to the opposing quarterback. They but they want more of a presence from an impact player. I mean, they drafted Luke Van Ness as an edge defender in 2023 in the first round. He's an edge defender. He had 7 sacks, but only a 9.5% pressure rate. They want someone who can apply pressure consistently. And Luke Van Ness and Kingsley Enagbare, they actually are, I think, plus pass rushers. But I believe he's kind of looking at their stats and what I've watched. They're average to below average defenders in a run game. This is where Barron Sorrell can really make a move, because I believe Barron Sorrell excels versus the run. Where he needed work was becoming a better pass rusher, which he has. And I think in the NFL he'll still continue to become a better pass rusher, but he excels versus the run. And when 2 of their top 3 edge defenders could be liabilities in the run game, that's where Barron Sorrell on some early downs could, crack into some of that rotation. I truly believe that. They have some other guys. I mean, they have Brenton Cox Jr., Aaron Mosby, Deslin Alexander, Jeremiah Morton. Honestly, all those guys, how about it? They're all undrafted free agents. These are all the depth guys they have at the Packers do at edge defenders, other than Rashawn Gary, Enagbare, and Luke Van Ness. Other than that, all the other guys they have basically as depth pieces are undrafted free agents. Talk about getting a bargain. But my point is, Barron Sorrell, not only he's going good for making the team, 4th round picks, you usually have a really good chance of doing that. But I think he's got a chance to crack the rotation situationally early on. But even looking at it, if he continues to progress as a pass rusher, you could be looking at Barron Sorrell, becoming a kind of a foundational piece for Green Bay in terms of them building blocks for the future. That's how Green Bay operates. Right? Green Bay, that's not this is not a flash in the pan, fly by night kind of organization. They invest in you. Like they don't draft a lot of Longhorns, right? Before Matthew Golden, it was like Jermichael Finley. You got to go back to they drafted Longhorns. Very stable organization, has success for years. They have the formulas they believe in, whether that be whether the coaches they bring in or their quarterback formula. So I think they love Barron Sorrell, not only because of his skill set, but what they've heard away from the field. I think Barron Sorrell is going to end up signing a second contract with the Green Bay Packers. That'd be my guess. Especially if he continues to progress as a pass rusher, they're going to love him. The bottom of that edge room for them has a lot of guys they haven't invested a ton in. Like I said, undrafted free agents. And the top of it has a lot of guys who, although they've earned trust and they've been somewhat productive, I think ultimately there's no stars, right? There's not a lot of stars at the top of that edge room for them. Rashawn Gary's that one guy. I'm not saying Barron Sorrell's going to come in and be a star, but like I said, because of that, there's room for cheap labor, and that's what draft picks are, cheap labor to end up getting more playing time because guys who are on contracts and potentially getting ready to cash in, or veteran players who are a lot more expensive, and you got a young player that is performing and producing at the same level, that usually is a bottom line decision, bottom dollar and bottom line decision for them. So we'll see. But I like Barron Sorrell's spot as well. I like that landing spot for him. Okay, go Jaden Blue, drafted in the 5th round by the Dallas Cowboys, 149th overall. This is for Jaden Blue. It's one of those spots where also it seems like it's a ideal landing spot for him. The Cowboys had, how about this? Cowboys had the fewest amount of explosive runs, 20+ yard runs than anyone in the NFL. They were tied with the Rams. They only had 3 explosive runs. They had the fewest rushing touchdowns in the NFL with 6, and they only averaged a measly 4 yards per carry. They need explosivity. They've been overhauling the running back position for a couple of years now. They signed Javonte Williams to a mercenary deal, just kind of a 1-year deal. Remember, they lost Rico Dowdle, who was their best running back last season, lost him in free agency. Miles Sanders, they also signed to a short-term mercenary deal. Both of those guys in running back years are pretty old. Javonte Williams, listen, and they still got Deuce Vaughn there, by the way. But Deuce Vaughn is still more of a boutique back with them. So he's still there. I think so is Malik Davis. I think he's still there too. But those guys on the bottom of the depth chart, and the Cowboys haven't been willing to give them, to showcase them with any real carries and touches, when the game is on the line, in my opinion. So I think they look at them as more depth pieces, even if they stick around. They need somebody who can not only move the chains, but they can change the game. And that's what Jaden Blue is. He is a game changer for him. Javonte Williams' first 2 years, he was, I think really a bright spot. His broken tackle rate was like every 6.5 rushes. He was getting a broken tackle in the first 2 years after his injury. Now he's getting one broken tackle every 19.7 rush attempts. So he's a different running back than he was in his first couple of years. Cowboys are getting a bit of a discount. He was averaging I believe around 3.7 yards per rush in 2024. So the Cowboys, there's room. He's not that explosive back they want. Maybe he was, but not now. Miles Sanders, he only had 79 touches with Carolina last season. He missed 6 games because of injuries, so that could keep him from becoming one of the lead backs for the Dallas Cowboys. Jaden Blue's got a real opportunity. They drafted Phil Maffa as well, the running back from Clemson, so they got 2 running backs to draft. But, man, Jaden Blue, 3.8 yards after contact per rush in his career. He might be the fastest running back in this draft class. 73% of his rushing yards come after contact. That'll be good for a Cowboys offensive line that's somewhat rebuilding, because he might get contacted early and often, which was the case for Cowboys running backs last season. And when he hit at the line of scrimmage, which happens to him 25% of the time, he was averaging 3.4 yards per carry when he was stuffed at or behind the line of scrimmage. Yeah. And 25% target rate in the passing game, number 2 among running backs in this class, and 16% slot rate, which was number 1 in this class among running backs. He's maybe the best receiving threat out of all the running backs in this class. So that's a great value for the Cowboys to get in the 5th round. And if you look at tread on the tires, which is why 28 years old and 25 years old is considered old for Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders at the running back position. With Jaden Blue, remember, left high school early, so he didn't have that extra year of high school. Was never the starting running back at Texas, so you don't have the wear and tear. He's about as fresh. Those legs are about as fresh as you get for Jaden Blue, and he's fast, as we know. And the Cowboys, Kevontae Turpin is their game changer. He plays wide receiver for them. They need another game-changing player with speed. CeeDee Lamb, of course, is a staple of that offense, he and Dak. But they need another potential player that can change the game for them on offense. And I think Turpin does it on special teams. Jaden Blue could do it in the backfield potentially. So we'll see. But I like that pick for them as well. All right, Cam Williams goes to the Eagles, 6th round, 207th pick, of course. Of course, they get a player that was valued in the, 3rd, 4th round, in the 6th round. That's what the Eagles do. And by the way, you add a value pick, because the guy that was projected in the middle rounds of the draft, and you get him in the 6th round at arguably one of the deepest position rooms in all of the NFL, the O-line of the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. They're already as deep as they can get. I mean, we got Lane Johnson. So let's start at right tackle. Let's assume Cam Williams ain't messing with left tackle until he can master right tackle for them in the 6th round. So they consider him a bit of a developmental project. And, the discipline, he's got to work on discipline, those things, some issues he had with Texas. But the upside is tremendous. Philly did not have one offensive lineman play in all 17 games. They didn't have not one of their offensive linemen played in all 17 games. So there is potential to you to move up the depth chart. And as long as you can crack the roster for you to get, now he could just be a practice squad guy too. I think either way he's going to be on the team, practice squad, or whether he cracks the roster. But they've had issues with continuity on the offensive line, even though they still won the Super Bowl. Lane Johnson, let's start at right tackle. Let's just say he's going to be a right tackle. Lane Johnson going on 13 years in the NFL. So always good when you can come in and learn from a veteran, all pro caliber like Lane Johnson. That's what Cam Williams has a chance to do. And also, you look at the guys behind him. They have Matt Pryor behind Lane Johnson, and I believe his name is Darian Kennard. Darian Kennard made his first start in Week 18 last year as a backup. And Matt Pryor is a swing tackle who had in his career 11 starts at offensive tackle, but 4 at left tackle. He's had 11 starts at guard. He's been a swing offensive lineman for him. So they just love him because of his versatility. So those are the 2 guys behind Lane Johnson, who's been in the league for 13 years, which means he ain't going to play more than 2-3 more years. All right. At offensive tackle. It could, but that would be crazy to be wild. So for Cam Williams as a developmental project, if he shows some promise, they got one guy that's a swing tackle. They like to move him around. He can play guard. He can play tackle, right tackle, left tackle. So depending on the injury situation, he's probably the chess piece that they want to plug in to manufacture depth. And then you got another guy who made his first start last year when the Eagles basically decided they had nothing to lose or to gain by playing that Week 18 game because they were already locked in to their slot in the playoffs. So, I mean, if you're Cam Williams, that's another spot for you that seems ideal for a developmental player. Even if you're a practice squad guy, that means we're talking more long-term. If he cracks this roster, first of all, getting in, if you're making the roster of the Philadelphia Eagles and on the offensive line, that's impressive enough for a 6th-round pick. Just today, because like I said, the room is already loaded, but we shall see. And they like developmental projects. The starting left tackle, Jordan Mailata, he's a prime example of it, right? This is a guy that was playing, what was he playing, like rugby or something like that before he ended up playing in the NFL. And I think he was discovered in 2018, first year he ever played football. He's been a developmental project for him, and now he's an all-pro. So they don't run from coaching in Philadelphia. They don't run from it. They run to it. All right. Hayden Conner, the other offensive lineman for the Longhorns, who went in this draft in the 6th round to the Arizona Cardinals, pick 211. The Arizona Cardinals, their top combination of offensive linemen played only 20% the snaps together. So the Arizona's offensive line combination with the most snaps played together played just around 20% of their total snaps last season. So they had also a lack of continuity on the offensive line. That's good for Hayden Conner coming in. Really, they do have Evan Brown is the left guard for them. He's the only guy that played in all 17 games, actually. And he is one of 4 offensive linemen, though, that's under contract for multiple seasons for the Arizona Cardinals. The question is, I know Hayden Conner's been a left guard. Can he play right guard? Is he comfortable playing both? Because they actually do have, I think, an opening there at right guard. And, I think they have Isaiah Adams. They drafted in the 3rd round in 2024, I believe. But we'll see if Hayden Conner can go in there. He's got to deal with the penalties too. You can't have a lot of penalties at offensive line as a young player. You got to show discipline. He had 10 false starts, I think, in his career. Somebody's got to clean up, but if he can go in there and show him a little bit of promise, I think he can at least make the practice squad for them. Or they do have veterans at the top of that offensive line, or at least at the top of that room. But who knows? He can come in there and kind of crack the bottom of the depth chart of the offensive line and potentially be a guy that can be a developmental project for them. They can see. All right. So, getting to Quinn. I know. I'll be quick about the Quinn one, so I don't want to take too long. All right. Quinn drafted in the 7th round, 231st overall. Honestly, I think for Quinn, I know he lost some money because he dropped in the draft. A lot of people thought he would be a mid-round pick. I think he almost ended up in a better situation than he probably would have ended up in a middle with a team that drafted him in the middle rounds. The reason he's not drafted in the middle rounds because the NFL doesn't really believe in developmental quarterbacks anymore. I mean, that's just been the last couple of years. That's what the NFL draft has told us, and he's a developmental quarterback. But the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams size, Cardi B size, Megan Thee Stallion size, but I don't know if there's a better situation for Quinn than the one he ended up with in Miami. I mean, it's crazy to say that. So Miami, they acquired Zach Wilson as their backup quarterback. We know what disaster Zach Wilson has been in the NFL. So I think that Quinn's got a shot at beating out Zach Wilson. I think any of the quarterback in the league has got a shot at beating out Zach Wilson. That would be his first task, right? Because you want to become the backup quarterback. Why do you want to become a backup quarterback? Because here's the number, guys. Last season in the NFL had 59 unique starting quarterbacks. Yeah, exactly. More than half the damn league needed a backup quarterback to start a game. In the year prior to that, in 2023, that number was, in 2023, it was 66. And in 2022, it was 68 unique starting quarterbacks. If you can become the backup, it's a good chance you're going to get some action. You know what I mean? That's really kind of become the rule of thumb. So it's almost like insurance, right? You want to make sure you're fully insured. Being fully insured, make sure you got a capable backup that can win you a game or two. All right. Having your starting quarterback, having a franchise quarterback, that's great. That's most of it. That's half the battle, right? Most of it. But if you want to be fully insured at quarterback, you got to have a capable backup. I don't know if Zach Wilson's that guy. But anyway, but you need one with Tua. Probably more than any other quarterback in the league, right? Tua has missed a ton of time in his 5 years. And he's signed right now through 2028 with the Miami Dolphins. Signed that contract after his only season, making it through the entire season without getting hurt and missing any starts. They signed him to a long-term deal through 2028. So only but one of those 5 years, that season, has he made it through an entire season starting every game. Same issue with Quinn, right? Quinn had to make it through the entire season, starting every game since, junior year of high school. And so in that respect, and this is what I'm like, well, why is that the ideal spot? Well, the ideal spot for Quinn is that he could get, if he cracks, the backup spot, ends up getting that back spot, there's a really good chance he's going to play. I mean, Miami went 6-5 with Tua last year, 2-4 without him. I mean, with Tua, they're awesome, right? 5.5 yards per play with Tua, 4.5 yards per play without Tua. That's the difference between being 14th in the NFL and being dead last in the league. That 4.5 yards per play would be dead last. That 5.5 will be 14th. And with Tua, they're converting 44% of their third downs. That would be top 10 in the league. Without Tua, they dropped to dead last in third down conversion rate at 22%. So what they want to do is what a lot of GMs want to do. When you do have a backup, you want a backup that somewhat skill set wise resembles your starter. So I don't have to drastically change the offense when they come in. And the truth is, and I've actually said this even before the Miami Dolphins drafted Quinn Ewers, I said Quinn and Tua actually are very similar because neither are very mobile. All right, so we got a little bit of functional mobility, but they're not mobile quarterbacks. Both are injury prone, unfortunately. All right. Both excel at basically your first read. Okay. Kind of first read, schemed up wide window throws. Sometimes predetermined reads, but they're great when they can get to the first read and get to it quickly. And the strange thing about it is because of Tua's injury history, they've crafted the offense so that he gets rid of the ball even faster so that it insulates him in pass protection. And the crazy thing about it, and Quinn is like that too, right? So we'll get to this. So if you go look at the similarities in Quinn's game and in Tua's game, Tua completed a league high 31% of his passes at or behind the line of scrimmage last season. Quinn's at 28% of his passes at or behind the line of scrimmage. Tua led the NFL in that category at 31%. If you look at passes attempted, 10 yards or more, Tua's at 27%. That's 34th among the qualifying quarterbacks. Attempting passes 10 yards or more down the field. By the way, it was 44% in 2022, 35% in 2023. It's continued to drop. So is Quinn's. Remember, Quinn used to throw the ball deep a lot when he first got to Texas, chunking it deep. Remember that Oklahoma State game? And Sark has curtailed that. Why? Well, Quinn just wasn't good at it. The reason that Tua has curtailed it is for injury issues, right? because the longer you're in the pocket or the longer you're at risk, you get rid of the football, you're no longer at risk. So the quicker you are in your time to throw, it's another insulated layer of pass protection. If you go look at 7% of Tua's throws went 20 yards or more down the field, Quinn was at 12%. But we know that's the weakest part of Quinn's game. So that's why Sark didn't want to throw any more deep passes. But for Tua, it was more about, hey, we don't want him in the pocket that long looking for vertical routes downfield, putting him at risk. So we got to get the ball out of his hands quickly. Miami only had 3 passing touchdowns last season outside the red zone. So the way they operate, I think is very similar. At least the way Tua operates is very similar to how Quinn operates. I went and looked at the play action pass rate, the RPO rate, and the screen rate. Because Sark is famous for having really high rates of play action, really high rates of RPOs. He calls his offense an RPO-based offense, and really high rates of screens. Essentially, if you go look at Quinn, most of the time, Quinn is probably 65% of the time he's throwing either a screen, he's using play action pass, or an RPO of the passing game. It might even be higher than that when you look at it overall. But that's somewhere just kind of guesstimating, usually. When I looked at this is based on Pro Football Focus, when I looked at the play action rate and the screen rate, and sometimes play action and RPO are conflated, of the Miami Dolphins, you get to 60%, right at 60%. And it could probably be higher depending on how they're judging the RPOs. But you're right there where Sark is. You're very similar in the ways that you want the cheat codes you're using to help your quarterback. Another thing, Miami's offense uses motion more than anybody else in the league since Mike McDaniel got there. They're about an 80% motion rate in terms of their motion rate on every play, and they're about 60 to 65% motion at snap rate. A lot of targets to motion as well. What's one of Sark's favorite cheat codes? I've called it a vital sign. It's motion, right? He uses a ton of motion at the snap. He's probably between 55 and 60% motion rate. Motion at the snap, probably not as high, probably should be higher. All those things probably should be higher. But all the studies and analytics indicate that all of your metrics improve with motion. Yards per attempt, yards per rush, passer rating, completion percentage, all that improves with motion. And Mike McDaniel uses a ton of it. So Quinn is used to operating a lot of the pre-snap motion, which can be complicated for a young quarterback. Not for Quinn. He uses it a ton, all the time in Sark's offense. If you go look at Tua's time to throw, he was at 2. If you go look at Tua's time to throw, out of 50 qualifying quarterbacks in the last 3 years with at least 200 plus pass attempts, he's at 2.36 average time to throw, 2.36 seconds. That's the second fastest in the NFL of that group I just mentioned. Second highest rate of play action pass among that group. Quinn is at 2.54 average time to throw, 2.54 seconds. Yeah, that's also one of the fastest in college football. You look at the ADOT of Tua, which is the average depth of target. He's at 6.1 in 2024. That was, according to Pro Football Focus, 66th out of 75 qualifying quarterbacks. He was top 10, actually, in Mike McDaniel's first year. He was at 10.1. But because he kept getting hurt, because he's back in the pocket looking for the deep route to Tyreek Hill, they said, man, we gotta shorten his time to throw. We gotta decrease his time to throw. All right, and therefore the ADOT, average depth of target, would also have to decrease so he can get the ball out quicker. So now he's at 6.1. He was at 10.1 a couple of years ago. Same thing happened to Quinn. Quinn's at 7.9 yards average depth of target at the end of the season. Remember, at one point, he was at 7.2 at the end of the regular season, and that was 73rd out of 79 qualifying power forward quarterbacks. It's one of the lowest average depth of targets in all of college football. Same thing with Tua. Why? Now, different reasons why they're trying to get the ball out quickly. That's just Quinn's strength because he's just bad at the deep ball. But for Tua, it was more about protection and insulating him. But for Quinn, that'll help him because Quinn also needs to be protected because he is a little bit injury prone. So much of that offense is compatible with what Quinn's already been doing. It might be a blessing in disguise. That's all I'm saying. All right, real quick, the undrafted free agents before we move on. Before we get done here, David Bender to the Titans. I do kind of like that. If you are an undrafted free agent, you don't want them to draft your position the year they're bringing you in as an undrafted free agent, right? They're trying to replenish and refresh certain positions, and you don't want them to drafted 2 corners and bringing in you as an undrafted free agent at corner. That doesn't seem right. For David Bender, they didn't draft a linebacker, and everybody was surprised they didn't draft a linebacker because their depth there is a little bit questionable. So they just acquired Cody Barton. He's on his 3rd team in as many years. They traded Kenneth Murray and Ernest Jones this offseason. They got Luke Gifford there. They got Jack Gibbons. Those guys are gone. Luke Gifford and Jack Gibbons are gone. They got Cedric Gray, a 2nd-year linebacker, who's a 4th-round pick for them, who was on IR last year. And so I think there's a real good possibility that David Bender, this is a good situation for him. I'll just say that. Right? They have depth there. They got some other guys, but at least they didn't draft a linebacker when they were bringing you in. And it's a position where they've actually had a lot of turnover. They've had guys leave, and they've been trading guys too from that position. So we shall see how much they like David Bender. Obviously, undrafted free agent, one of the toughest ways to make it. Jake Majors also trying to make it in their way. They didn't draft the center. Tampa Bay. They didn't draft the center. And if you go look at their depth chart right now, the O-line, most of it is under contract for multiple years, except for I think one of their right tackle maybe he's not under contract, but they only got 1 center listed on the depth chart. But I'm sure they got a plan at center. I'm sure Jake Major's going to be our 2nd string center, but they only got 1. Graham Barton is the only one listed on the depth chart. And Tampa Bay, they were a decent O-line. They were 2nd in pass block grade from Pro Football Focus, 17th in run block grade, 5th in pass block win rate, and they were 6th in I think run game win rate. So they were a pretty good offensive line. But the fact that they only have 1 center on depth chart could be good for Jake Majors. Gavin Holmes with the Detroit Lions. I'll say that Gavin Holmes does excel playing man coverage. That's what he does really well, actually bump and run man coverage. Strangely enough, now he's gone, Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, now the head coach of the Jets, but they played more man coverage than anybody else in the league. I don't know if they're going to continue that with him gone, but if they do, Gavin Holmes just kind of fit that. Now, the bad news for Gavin Holmes is they are loaded. They drafted Terrion Arnold, remember him, in the 1st round not too long ago. Ennis Rakestraw, they drafted him in the 2nd round last season, but he only played a few snaps because of injuries. And they have Amick Robertson, who is their slot cornerback. I actually liked him coming out in the draft. He was a good player. And they signed Avonte Maddox and Rakia Sin as backup depth pieces. They were just loaded. They used to have a lot of depth at cornerback. They brought in DJ Reed as well. They actually lost Carlton Davis via free agency. They signed DJ Reed, the Jets cornerback. I guess a little swap there. He's a really good player. So they just loaded at cornerback. Maybe they see him as a developmental project for the practice squad. There's also Silas Bowden, who went to Minnesota. Minnesota has lots of play action pass, lots of cheat codes in their offense. It's a Mick Shanahan offense. That's kind of what Silas Bowden is coming from, so that's good. But they are loaded. They got Justin Jefferson, maybe the best wide receiver in football. They got Jordan Addison, who's a really dependable, consistent number 2 for them. Drafted him also in the 1st round. They got Jalen Naylor as their 3rd wide receiver. He had 28 for 414 last season and 6 touchdowns. Remember they brought in Rondale Moore. I brought him in as a depth piece too. They just got a lot of depth at that position at wide receiver. So hopefully they see him as a developmental project, maybe as a guy that can stick on the practice squad. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Sorry I went on there, but I had a lot I want to share with you guys about my draft analysis of the Longhorns. Congrats to all those guys for getting to the league. But hey, more work still to come. Hope all those guys can achieve their dreams. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, twisting and tweaking the dials as always. We appreciate his efforts. Thank you guys for joining us. I appreciate all of you guys and your participation in the show. And thank you to each and every one of you guys out there for helping us build this On Texas football family. Thank you as well to Laura Baker for sponsoring Sunday School, and for Laura Baker and for Matthew. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.